Instead of asking if annuities are good or bad, let's ask a better question. What problem are you trying to solve for in retirement? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Michael Baker, and for almost 2 decades, I've been helping people prepare and plan for their retirement years. And one topic that just constantly comes up is the topic of annuities, because we have thousands of baby boomers right now barreling into their retirement years, and annuities are a very, very popular product that is marketed specifically to people preparing and planning for retirement. One of the things that comes with the financial industry is just the fact that so many different thousands of annuity types exist, and so many different types of people are talking about annuities in many different ways. This includes professional journalists who often write articles about annuities. Many times, they don't even know exactly what they're talking about. So let's talk about specifically what annuities can do and how I look at them as a product or solution or some type of strategy for retirement. So first, I've done several videos on different types of annuities, and you can find those on the channel, and I encourage you to watch them. But there are many different types of annuities out there. There are immediate income annuities. There are deferred income annuities. We have fixed annuities, fixed index annuities. There are variable annuities. We now have registered index linked annuities. Are you confused yet? So here is the thing. The question you need to ask yourself is, what problem am I trying to solve for? And specifically for most of our folks that are preparing for retirement, the one thing that they're trying to figure out is, how are they actually going to do income in retirement? You see, when we're working, we have a pretty consistent and reliable paycheck that hits our bank accounts either twice a month or monthly, and we get accustomed to that cadence, and that paycheck is where we organize and design our lifestyle. We at least I hope we're designing our lifestyle and we're living within our means around what that monthly paycheck looks like. And at least in my experience, most of the folks that come to, the table and are wanting to figure out how they're going to do retirement and plan for retirement, they want that lifestyle to continue. In fact, they're very adamant that they want to maintain the same standard of living and lifestyle that they have now. And they may even want a few extras. Like they may want to, do some additional trips. They may have some grandchildren, and they may want to do some big family trips or vacations together, things that they don't necessarily have the time to do because they're working or employed full time. Maybe they, want to travel the world as a couple. So there's lots of things that go into trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do income in retirement. But one thing remains true, is that when those paychecks stop from work, we want to have a plan for how to replace them and have them continue. And most of the people that we talk with want those paychecks to actually be stable. The good news is that for just about everybody here in the United States, you already come built with your very own personal annuity. And that annuity is Social Security. In fact, you pay into Social Security and you qualify. And the promise is, whenever you retire and are eligible to claim benefits, there will be a Social Security check ready for you to claim, and you could claim on your terms. And that number is already predetermined. They have a formula in advance. They'll start sending you statements. You can go online to ssa.gov and see exactly what your annuity payment check from Social Security will look like. And so that's exactly what, if you look up annuity in the definition, one of those definitions is a stream of payments. So most people come already locked and loaded with Social Security as a primary income and annuity strategy for retirement. Other people that are super, super lucky may also have a defined benefit or a pension, where they have the option to choose that pension as a lifetime income payment, which is also an annuity payment. So these are the things I want you to start reframing when you think about annuities, because annuities are marketed to be the Swiss Army knife, and that's not, in my opinion, what they are designed to do. I think, in my view, annuities are really designed to do maybe two things. One, provide some type of consistent, predictable, reliable income. And two, protect some assets. Because if you are trying to protect some assets, there are many different ways that people go about doing it. They may put the money in money markets, savings, CDs. I tend to think that when interest rates are, relatively decent, like they have been in the last couple of years, there are some annuity strategies that may allow for a little bit higher savings rate and maybe defer some taxes on that interest. So for certain people, that may make sense. But for the vast majority of folks that are looking to create a structured retirement income plan, one of the things that we're trying to figure out is, what is that lifestyle? What does our lifestyle cost? And how are we going to solve for that? And what layers or levels of income do we already have in place? And many people, unfortunately, only have Social Security because a lot of companies either froze their pensions or discontinued their pensions. So not everybody has a pension, but we all have that Social Security. And couples, it's very important for couples to coordinate their Social Security claiming strategy. So let's think about that first. Let's ask ourselves a better question. What are we trying to solve for? If we're trying to solve for income, then we need to think about annuities and how annuities may fit or may not fit into what your picture actually looks like. Let me take a moment and just share some of my thoughts on how I think the framing of annuities is wrong or incorrect. If you're listening to this video or watching this video and you've heard an annuity framed in this way, I would say it's a red flag. One, I don't believe annuities are growth vehicles. Certain annuities, like fixed indexed annuities, are often pitched by advisors or insurance agents as a way to get market-like returns without taking any risk. Meaning there's a floor of 0%, and like in a bad market year, you don't lose money, so you stay level. But in good years, you have the opportunity to grow the accounts. And that on its face is reasonably accurate. However, what I often hear is people trying to pretend that these are actually growth vehicles and they are designed to actually compete with market-like performance. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. If we're wanting to actually talk about what they may do well against, if you want to take a really good accumulation strategy inside of a fixed index annuity, one that's not one of these volatility controlled indexes or some black box index, but a good vanilla, S&P strategy with a nice cap, very simple and easy to understand, and you want to compare that with, maybe a bond allocation in a portfolio over time, that may be a more fair comparison. But trying to pretend that these annuities are growth vehicles and that they're going to keep pace with a market-like portfolio without the downside risk, I think that framing is wrong and misleading, and I would call that a red flag. Another thing that I see a lot is when folks are coming to the office and they have a variable annuity. Variable annuities are oftentimes favorites of folks that own a broker's or a series license where they can sell variable annuity contracts. At least in my experience, I have seen some variable annuity contracts that actually were pretty decent on the income side. But what we often find is that they are very expensive to own. There may be layers of fees when you get into the, contract fee, the mortality and expense fee, the fee for any living benefits like income rider or death benefit rider. And then you have the internal expenses of the funds or sub-accounts themselves. These can be quite expensive. And it doesn't mean that they can't work. It just seems like a very expensive solution to a problem that can be solved either through a couple of different strategies. For instance, if you're looking to actually just grow your funds, then a regular growth account, even if it had an advisory fee, is going to be less expensive than the variable annuity. And you probably have way more flexibility when it comes to the types of investments that you can own. Then if you're looking at income, at least in the years that I've seen when comparing products, I typically don't see variable annuity contracts being the most generous when it comes to income benefits. There are many other ways where you could actually get more income for the same amount of premium or money going into the contract. So, it doesn't mean that a variable annuity can't work. It just means that sometimes, again, we go back to our question, what problem are we trying to solve for? If we're trying to solve for growth, it's probably one of the least efficient ways to grow the funds unless there's something very specific or unique to your situation. And if we're trying for income, again, we probably can have solutions out there that may give us better income or more opportunity for enhanced income than just a variable annuity. So those are a couple things that I see. The last thing, and this one comes up frequently, annuity marketers are really savvy and sharp. They are fantastic at marketing. There are billions of dollars spent every year in the financial services industry on marketing. And sometimes you understand, like, marketing is all about the sizzle and about how we make something sound really super exciting. In my view, the more complex it sounds, the more I tend to stay away from it. I like very fundamental things, blocking and tackling. What will the annuity do? What's it contractually designed to do? Not what it might do, but what will the annuity actually do? That's what we want to focus on when we're considering an annuity strategy. So if we're looking at income and we look at the illustration, I want to see what my guaranteed income is going to look like, contractually guaranteed income. I'm not going to look at income that's based on hypothetical growth or anything like that, because that's all possibilities and what it might do. If that happens, great. We get cherries on top of our sundae. But if it doesn't happen and we built our plan around expectations, well, then now we've got disappointment and we're likely in a strategy that we can't exit without some pain. So I want to think about that first. What will the annuity do, not what it might do? Another component that I often see, and it really gives me heartburn with marketing, are annuity bonuses. Most of these bonuses that are talked about in any type of contract are smoke and mirrors, because these carriers, remember, at the core of every annuity company it's an insurance company. Insurance companies are the best in the world at understanding risk management. They are not giving away free cupcakes. Okay. They are not in business to, put themselves at risk unnecessarily. So understand, when you hear a word like a bonus or some type of step up, you want to be very clear about what that bonus actually means, because in many cases, it's not on money that you can tangibly access. It's accessible through some type of income rider or some type of maybe death benefit rider. There are multiple ways that these things can be structured where they sound really, really good, but it's not exactly what you may think when you first hear it. So you want to get clarity on when someone tells you there's a bonus or some guaranteed growth rate. That's another one. Oh, it's going to grow. I've got a contract that, it grows at 9% per year. That's a big one. Well, I don't know anything right now in this interest rate environment that it gives you a guaranteed growth rate of 9%. That sounds too good to be true. So when you hear something that sounds too good to be true, your first line of defense is to start asking questions. One of the big things that I hear a lot within the business and within people explaining what they may own or are considering to purchase is something that has a growth rate that seems outlandish for the current environment. So usually what we find is that growth rate is not an actual growth rate on cash. These are still things that we want to understand. It doesn't mean that the product itself is a bad product. It may just be positioned in a very misleading way. And that's what we want to get to, because with the right education, I think a lot of people can make really informed decisions about what's best for them in their retirement. But we want to make sure that people aren't being misled or buying the brochure. We want you to make sure you're buying the contract and you know exactly what that contract is going to do. Let me wrap this up with just a brief example. Let's say we have a married couple that are in their early 60s and they're planning to work for, another 4 to 5 years, just depending on how things and pan out, but they feel like they're doing well. They've got their mortgage paid off, kids are grown and independent, and they're really looking forward to kind of, getting past the finish line with work and entering into their retirement years. And they're thinking, hey, at 65, 66, we're both are eligible for Medicare, so we don't really have to worry about, healthcare expenses the way that we would now if we wanted to retire early. And, they're looking at their savings rates and they're thinking that they're going to be close to, a million, 1.1 million by the time they get to 65 if everything continues. Well, of course, that is making some great assumptions, but you also have to think about risk. And one of the things that they start thinking about is, well, gosh, the market has done really well for us in the last couple of years, but as we get closer to our retirement date, we really can't afford to have a major market setback. We can't afford a 30%, 40% decline in our portfolio value because, that would set us back, years as it relates to income in retirement, and we don't want to keep working and hope that our portfolio recovers and then we can go live. And so this is the point in time, where they've got some runway left where they might say, what, why don't we look at building in some guaranteed income pieces that can grow and defer while we're finishing out our working, we're finishing doing our saving and getting ourselves ready to go. We may even give ourselves a retirement test drive, start living on our quote retirement budget for a couple of years, make sure that we're dialed in on those numbers. But when their expected retirement date does arrive years in advance, they could know contractually, like, okay, when we retire, we walk away at 65. Here's what Social Security looks like. Here's what our annuity income looks like. Where does that leave us as far as lifestyle? And hopefully those two combined can coordinate a really nice, lifetime income paycheck where their lifestyle is actually, protected. These are the types of things you want to be doing well in advance of retirement. And of course, if you haven't made a plan and you're going to retire, in 3 months, then time is of the essence for you to make a plan. But also, I think, as you get 5-10 years out from your retirement, the more you start planning, the more you allow yourself to have options and flexibility as you approach your future retirement date. So this is what I think my core message to you is you have to start thinking in terms of, trade-offs when it comes to just about every decision you make. But if you were to take your assets, think about your portfolio that you have now, all the assets that you have that you would dedicate towards some type of retirement. And I want you to think about what portion of those assets should be dedicated to creating income, and what portion of those assets should be dedicated to like long-term growth, hedging against inflation, liquidity, ad hoc purchases, so forth. Because to me, you don't want to put your retirement paychecks at risk in the market. And there's always going to be risk, and we're not afraid of market risk, but we want to make sure that our timeline lines up with how our assets are allocated. And we've put the right matching in place. We've got income assets that are working to create paychecks for us. And we've got, long-term growth assets allocated in a way that we're expecting to see the rewards for those deferred growth on those assets for down the road when we're going to need those assets the most. So these are my thoughts. One of the things that I think about, people are going to talk about annuities all the time. There's so much marketing noise out there. There's people saying annuities are great. There's people saying annuities are terrible. And what I would say to you is, like anything else, annuities are just a tool. No one walks around and says, hammers are terrible. The only people that think hammers are terrible are the people that always get told that they should just buy a hammer, right? So understand that every tool has a purpose, and that's what we want annuities to be, is like they're a tool. What problem are we trying to solve for? If we're trying to solve for income, they may be a great tool for you to consider. If we're not trying to solve for income, we're trying to solve for growth or legacy or something else, maybe they're not a fit. But the key thing is that you understand exactly what they are for and designed to do, and whether or not that works for you and your plan. So just remember, everyone's goals are different. and their timelines are different. Your appetite for risk is different. So the right approach for you is going to depend on your goals, your timeline, and your appetite for risk. But if you're at a point where you're trying to figure out how this may all fit together for you, or if you've been considering annuities and you're just not really sure, what makes sense or doesn't, or there's just a lot of confusing information out there, then hey, click on that link and let's schedule a retirement vision call together. There's no pressure, just a conversation, and see what we can do to help. As always, thanks for watching. And hey, if you found this video to be useful, give us a like. It helps us out on the YouTube algorithms. We'll talk to you next time.